All right, what's up to everybody here on Patreon? This is the bonus content for It's Not Normal, episode 5, where we're talking about mourning the childhood or the teen years that you never got to have. How to reconcile the fact that your parents sabotaged so many experiences of yours growing up. And so I posted a TikTok about this a few days ago, and I've gotten a ton of comments, and so we're going to dive into the comment section. All right, the first comment that we've got is from Days. First and foremost, Days, I just want to say that I love your profile photo. I grew up watching The King of Queens, so shout out to Doug Heffernan. Days said, "It's also hard to learn self-control in your early 20s after gaining so many freedoms suddenly. I made bad decisions out of rebellion." This is something that I don't think a lot of controlling or narcissistic parents realize. When they hold on so tight to their kids and they don't really let them experience a lot of things that most kids normally do, if they kind of pretend like a lot of the more dangerous things in life don't exist, when their kid is finally exposed to these things, chances are when they're an adult and they're not under the guidance or the supervision of someone, it can be that much more dangerous. When you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you don't have a lot of the same responsibilities as you do when you're an adult. And chances are you're still living with someone, a guardian, a parent. And so you've got someone guiding you. You've got someone supervising you, at least checking in and making sure that you're coming home every night, that you're doing okay. And when you are an adult and you've moved out of your parents' house, maybe you've got a job now and you're making your own money, so you don't have to ask for money. You don't have to ask for permission to go out or be home at a certain time. That kind of free reign and freedom, coupled with experiencing things and experimenting with things that you haven't up until that point, can be extremely dangerous. If you showed up to a party when you were 16 or 17 years old and you had a beer for the first time, right? You kind of start to understand, okay, what alcohol is, how it makes you feel, how it maybe impairs your decisions or changes your personality if you've had a bit too much, how you feel the next morning. And you're also kind of held accountable because if you have to go home at the end of the night, someone's going to know. But if you're experiencing these things for the first time when you're out on your own and you have all of this freedom, it's that much easier for these things to kind of spiral out of control and really get out of hand. And I think that's why it's so important for parents to educate their kids about everything, even the dangerous things or the things that they think might be scary. Because again, at one point or another, your kid is going to encounter these things. And wouldn't you rather them be prepared than have no idea what they're doing? If they can learn about these things from you instead of, like I said, the internet or maybe peers of theirs who don't know much better than them, it's going to be beneficial to everyone involved. And again, I think the most crucial part of all of this is having a relationship with your kid where they feel comfortable enough to ask you these questions and to be honest with you. Because if your kid comes home when they're 17, 18 years old and they say, "Hey, Mom, there was beer at this party and I tried one." Okay, don't yell at them. Don't judge them. Don't punish them and ground them for 3 weeks. Be happy that they felt comfortable enough to come and talk to you about it. And then let's get a little educated. Let's talk about the risks. Let's talk about what we're going to do here. It can be so much easier, but I think when parents want to maintain control and just kind of pretend like these things don't exist, it makes it that much harder when kids are actually exposed to these things for the first time. So I completely understand where you're coming from. All right, the next comment is from XOXO Gossip Goose. She said, "I was practically only allowed to leave the house to go to school. I feel so emotionally and socially stunted. I'm 30 now and the world terrifies me." First, I'm totally sorry that you're having a hard time with this. I completely understand where you're coming from. When you grow up in such a controlling and a sheltered environment, it can be really difficult to feel comfortable socializing and going out in the world and doing things that should feel relatively normal. And between my parents kind of forming the opinions of kids my age for me and me feeling pressured to kind of take their opinions on as my own, and also limiting my interaction with kids and never really allowing me to go out unsupervised, I started to develop, I guess, a bit of anxiety anytime I would go out, and I would want to come home. It got to the point where I didn't want to go out and hang out with anybody. If I got invited to a friend's house, I would want to go home immediately. And when your parents foster that kind of dependence because they want you to be home and around and available to them all the time, it's doing you a disservice, and it's making this social development that much harder for you, and it doesn't get any easier as you move into adulthood. And so that's, I feel like, a level of neglect on the parents' part. I remember always being a really social kid, and then at one point just kind of feeling a bit of a switch where I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to be around kids my age. All I wanted to do was be home with my family and my parents, and that was where I felt comfortable and safe. And they would allow that instead of kind of encouraging me to go out and to do things and to socialize. And that can lead to a lot of anxiety, and feeling scared in the world. But I think my best advice would be to create whatever kind of a life that you want for yourself now, and just know that you can do it, and to take baby steps. If you've got a friend that you can reach out to, maybe go and get a cup of coffee in a public place, or if you know someone who has a bit of a friend group, pull someone aside and explain to them your situation and ask to be included, just so you can kind of start to feel comfortable socializing or in a social setting. All right, the next comment is from Elise Sweet, who said, I wasn't allowed to have/go to sleepovers, birthday parties, or express myself. Now I express myself every way possible. I feel you on that first part, and congratulations on that second part. I'm so happy that you're expressing yourself. I didn't express myself for a long time, and I didn't even realize that I wasn't expressing myself, which is the really interesting part. I was conditioned to believe that it was best for me if I only showed the parts of my personality or the sides of me that I thought would be well received by the people that I was around. And initially that was my parents, but that way of thinking continued and translated to friends. And it's really difficult to kind of break out of a role when you're raised by narcissistic or controlling parents. So often you kind of fall into this one role. I was a really high achieving kid. I played sports, and I was a tomboy for most of my childhood. I shopped in the boys section. I dressed like a lot of the boys in my class. And so anytime I would kind of deviate from that, a spectacle would be made out of it. Or if I was expressing a thought or an opinion that differed from my parents, that would always be a source of tension or controversy. And so over time, it just teaches you to suppress all of those things and to kind of hide them away, and only to show the sides of yourself that are going to be well received by the people that you're around. And it's not until you're out of that environment and you're in an environment that's safe enough to explore these things that they start to kind of pop back up, where you can explore all of these different sides of your personality. You can embrace all of them, not just the ones that you think the people that are around you are going to like. And that, for me, has been a really wonderful part of this process, just getting to know myself again and allowing myself to embrace every single side of my personality and not feel like I have to hide my opinions or pretend like I feel differently about something, because I know if I express how I'm truly feeling, an argument will follow. And I've really enjoyed the process of finding out who I am and being open enough to explore these different sides of my personality and to allow them to evolve, because no longer am I stuck in this box or this role where people around me are expecting me to be this one thing or to feel this certain way or to dress in a certain way. I'm free to experiment, and I'm free to express myself however I see fit. And that's been a really wonderful part of the process for me. All right, the next comment that we've got is from Asia. She said, I have to remind myself it's okay to have plans on a Tuesday or somewhere to go twice in 1 week. I completely feel you. I understand where you're coming from here. When I first moved out of my parents' house, I would say in the year or two following that, so many experiences that I had felt almost surreal. And it wasn't like I was doing anything outrageous. It would be anything from going out and getting home really late at night and then still maybe going out to a diner afterwards and not getting home until like the early hours of the morning, to, just going out and buying myself like a little extra something because I feel like I deserved it or I worked really hard. All of these little luxuries can seem almost unbelievable when you've been raised in such a controlling environment. And there are still times when I almost feel guilty because I feel like I'm doing too much for myself or like I don't deserve these things. There are times when I still feel like I almost want to ask for permission or for someone to tell me, okay, yeah, this is the right decision or this is something that you should do. It's so strange in some ways to kind of step into that role of control and feel that autonomy over your life and your decisions, and letting go of that guilt for doing things that you want to do, even if it is on a Tuesday night, it's a bit of a process, but getting on the other side of that is really fun. I feel like that's when you can really start to live your life. And yeah, it's a really fun thing. All right, and the last comment that we've got is from Bree, who said, I wasn't allowed to date as a teen up until 19. Now I have bad communication skills with men. It's ruining everything. I completely understand where you're coming from. From the time I was in fourth grade, as young as fourth grade, I remember talking to my parents about things like this and them being so serious about it. I've got little ones around. I have younger kids in my life, and when they come home from school and they're telling me how they have a crush on someone or how they have a girlfriend, it's cute. It's innocent. It's not serious. And I remember having these kinds of conversations with my parents when I was super young and them being so caught up about it, telling me, oh, boys and girls can only be friends and you have to tell them that, you can't be more than friends. And well, did you try to hold hands? And it was such a big deal. And so I think from the time I was super young, they shaped my view of relationships with boys to be super serious. And that, I think, hindered me throughout my life because I wouldn't ever entertain anything casual. I wouldn't look at relationships with guys in a non-serious way. If I was interested in someone, it had to be like a serious thing. And not only that, but my parents wouldn't allow me to, go on a date with a boy or to have a boyfriend. My first serious relationship was with my husband, and that was because he was the first person that I met who was worth dealing with all of the stress and tension and arguments that followed from me telling my parents about him. Anyone that I had gone out with or talked to before him, if I didn't immediately feel some kind of a spark or there's a possibility of this really going somewhere, like I could see myself marrying you type beat, like I would just end it because it wasn't worth telling my parents. It wasn't worth the risk of them finding out and the punishment that would happen afterwards. And it also wasn't worth all of the lies and the stories that I had to come up with to just try to sneak out and go on a date. It was too stressful. And so I never really casually just got to know boys or had crushes on boys. I was never able to talk to my mom or to my parents about, how a boy was treating me, or if I was interested in a boy, or if I wanted to go out on a date, or what to expect from a partner. And I think when you don't experience those things until you're older, it can be really hard because you don't get to know yourself within the context of a relationship. You don't know the things to look for, the things that you like, the things that you dislike. What kind of qualities do you want in a partner because you've had no experience? And I know for me, it was really difficult to kind of get to know my role within a relationship, in a serious relationship, for the very first time. And not only that, this kind of ties into the rest of the episode. When I was in my first relationship in my early 20s and I was experiencing all of these things for the first time, it was really difficult for me to understand how other people could have been in relationships before the person that they met and are going to marry and spend their lives with, because it didn't make sense to me how I was like, how are you going to do all of these things and say these things to a person who, you don't actually feel this way because you didn't end up with them. The idea of multiple partners or casual relationships or just relationships that don't end in marriage was so foreign to me. And so it was really hard for me to kind of deal with the fact that most other people had relationships before me. And that was a really difficult thing for me to kind of come to terms with and to understand and accept as normal in my own life. And I think so much of that just stems from the fact that I myself never got to experience that. And my idea of relationships was shaped in a way where it was viewed as so serious and so black and white, that there really wasn't much room for exploration there. And I think that was a huge hindrance for me personally and socially. And so I'm really sorry that this is something that you struggle with, but you can absolutely get there. I think similarly with feeling anxious about going into the world in general, it's a matter of baby steps. You are in full control to make your life into whatever you want it to be. You're in control of all of your decisions. And so with the help of friends and doing research, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy who was on said that the most beneficial thing that you can do for the people around you, relationships that you have, friendships, people in your life, is to work on yourself. And so I think you recognizing this and recognizing the fact that you maybe not being allowed to date up until the point that you were 19 maybe kind of hindered your development in a romantic sense. Unpack that and understand where it comes from and how it's impacted you and how you want to change that moving forward, and then kind of outline steps for yourself for how you can get there. Set goals and follow those steps, and before you know it, you'll be there because you can do it. We can all do it. And I think that's the most wonderful part of realizing our trauma, is that we can start to unlearn all of these negative behaviors, trace back where a lot of our hardships and our struggles come from, and use that as information and knowledge as we progress and move forward. So with that, that's about all the time that I've got today for comments, but I will be back very soon with another episode. And thank you to anyone and everyone who's supporting me here on Patreon. Until next time. Bye.